Hello, my name is Sarah Utoff and welcome to Trundlebed Tales. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different than how they normally are because this is actually part of the Rilla of Ingleside readathon that's going on Facebook right now. If you haven't joined up yet, then I highly recommend that you go and look up the page because the posts have all sorts of great information about Rilla of Ingleside. Now, Rilla of Ingleside is the last book in the Anne of Green Gables series, and one of the things that I found out through this readathon is that even this version, even the later day versions that say unabridged, are actually abridged. That means extra information, whatever the abridger decides to get rid of is taken out. But I also have a copy of the 1921 edition of Rilla of Ingleside, and that's going to be the one that I'm going to be reading today because it is actually unabridged. And you can also find this same edition on Internet Archive. Now, Rilla is a very important book to me. It's one that I recommend to people a lot. Anybody who wants something in the way of a home front novel, no matter what home front, I strongly recommend this book because it just does a great job of telling you what life was like then. And even though this is different because it's Canadian and it's World War I had a lot of stories from that time period growing up, and I've done a lot of research on the time period in general, and this is just so what happened everywhere. It was a longer home front in Canada than it was in the United States, but it just is a brilliant book about that. I also have, I came to the realization, well, really somebody pointed it out to me a couple years ago, that Rilla is 14 in this book in 1914. That means she was born in 1900. That is the year my great-grandmother was born. So she was Rilla's age. You always think of the people in Anne and Gilbert's world as kind of over the hill, back in history where you can't get to them. But it turns out I could have known Rilla. I could have talked to her. So, well, if I could get to Canada. But I just find that is a really cool connection. Now, I want to be sure to thank Andrea Mackenzie, who set up this reading, and also Benjamin Lefebvre, which I've known him online for a long time, but I've never had to say his last name. I hope that was close. You can missay mine. I understand. People do all the time anyway. And going on from that, I also can be really bad at place names. I had a professor at the University of Iowa who said that the one thing that distinguished American place names named after a person or a place is the actual name of the place is pronounced wrong. So I'm going to say that as an apology from the front, but most of them are said by Susan, and I think we can just assume maybe she's pronouncing it wrong if I am. So thank you for joining me for this reading today, and I hope that you enjoy it, and I hope that you read and check out the readathon for Rilla of Ingleside. Chapter 29, Wounded and Missing. "Battered but not broken" was the headline of Monday's paper, and Susan repeated it over and over again to herself as she went about her work. The gap caused by the St. Quentin disaster had been patched up in time, but the Allied line was being pushed relentlessly back from the territory that had been purchased in 1917 with 500,000 lives. On Wednesday, the headline was, "British and French check Germans." But still, the retreat went on. Back and back and back. Where would it end? Would the line break again, this time disastrously? On Saturday, The headline was, "Even Berlin admits offensive checked." And for the first time in that terrible week, the Ingleside folks dared to draw a long breath. "Well, we've got 1 week over. Now for the next," said Susan staunchly. "I feel like the prisoner on the rack when they stopped turning it," said Miss Oliver to Rilla, as they went to church on Easter morning. "But I am not off the rack. The torture may begin again at any time." "I doubted God last Sunday," said Rilla, "but I don't doubt him today. Evil cannot win. Spirit is on our side, and it is bound to outlast flesh." Nevertheless, her faith was often tried in the dark spring that followed. Armageddon was not, as they had hoped, a matter of a few days. It stretched out into weeks and months. Again and again, Hindenburg struck with savage, sudden blows, and with alarming, though futile, success. Again and again, the military critics declared the situation extremely perilous. Again and again, Cousin Sophia agreed with the military critics. "If the Allies go back 3 miles more, the war is lost," she wailed. "Is the British Navy anchored in those 3 miles?" demanded Susan scornfully. "It is the opinion of a man who knows all about it," said Cousin Sophia solemnly. "There is no such person," retorted Susan. "As for the military critics, they do not know one blessed thing about it, for any more than you and I. They have been mistaken times out of number. What do you always look on the dark side, Sophia Crawford?" "Maybe because there isn't any bright side, Susan Baker." "Oh, is there not? It is the 20th of April, and Hindy is not in Paris yet, although he said he would be there by April 1st. Is that not a bright spot at least?" "It is my opinion that the Germans will be in Paris before very long, and more than that, Susan Baker, they will be in Canada." "Not in this part of it. The Huns shall never step foot in Prince Edward Island as long as I can handle a pitchfork," declared Susan, looking and feeling quite equal to routing the entire German army single-handed. "No, Sophia Crawford, to tell you the plain truth, I am sick and tired of your gloomy predictions. I do not deny that some mistakes have been made. The Germans would have never gotten back Passchendaele if the Canadians had been left there, and it was a bad business trusting to those Portuguese at the Lys River. But that is no reason why you or anyone should go about proclaiming the war is lost. I do not want to quarrel with you, least of all at such a time as this, but our morale must be kept up, and I am going to speak my mind out plainly and tell you if you cannot keep from such croaking, your room is better than your company." Cousin Sophia marched home in high dudgeon to digest her affront, and she did not appear in Susan's kitchen for many weeks. Perhaps it was just as well, for they were hard weeks, when the Germans continued to strike, now here, now there, and seemingly vital points fell to them at every blow. And one day in early May, when the wind and sunshine frolicked in Rainbow Valley, and the maple grove was golden green, and the harbor all blue and dimple and white-capped, the news came about Jem. There had been a trench raid on the Canadian front, a little trench raid so insignificant that it was never even mentioned in the dispatches. And when it was over, Lieutenant James Blythe was reported wounded and missing. I think this is even worse than the news of his death would have been, moaned Rilla through her white lips that night. No, no, missing leaves a little hope, Rilla, urged Gertrude Oliver. Yes, torturing, agonized hope that keeps you from ever becoming quite resigned to the worst, said Rilla. Oh, Miss Oliver, must we go for weeks and months not knowing whether Jem is alive or dead? Perhaps we will never know. I cannot bear it. I cannot. Walter. And now Jem. This will kill Mother. Look at her face, Miss Oliver. You will see that. And Faith. Poor Faith. How can she bear it? Gertrude shivered with pain. She looked up at the pictures hanging over Rilla's desk and felt a sudden hatred of Mona Lisa's endless smile. Will not even this blot it off your face? She thought savagely. But, she said gently, no, it won't kill your mother. She's made of finer metal than that. Besides, she refuses to believe Jem is dead. She will cling to hope, and we must all do that. Faith, you may be sure, will do it. I cannot, moaned Rilla. Jem was wounded. What chance will he have? Even if the Germans found him, we know how they have treated wounded prisoners. I wish I could hope, Miss Oliver. It would help, I suppose. But hope seems dead to me. I can't hope without some reason for it. And there is no reason. When Miss Oliver had gone to her own room, and Rilla was lying on her bed in the moonlight, praying desperately for a little strength, Susan stepped in like a gaunt shadow and sat down beside her. Rilla, dear, do not you worry. Little Jem is not dead. Oh, how can you believe that, Susan? Because I know. Listen you to me. When that word came this morning, the first thing I thought of was Dog Monday. And tonight, as soon as I got the supper dishes washed and the bread set, I went right down to the station. There was Dog Monday waiting for the night train, just as patient as usual. Now, really, dear, that trench raid was 4 days ago, last Monday night. And I said to the station agent, can you tell me if that dog howled or made any kind of fuss last Monday night? He thought it over a bit, and then he said, no, he did not. Are you sure? I said. There's more depends on it than you think. Dead sure, he said. I was up all night last Monday night because my mare was sick, and there was never a sound out of him. I would have heard it if there had been, for the stable door was open all the time, and his kennel is right across from it. Now, Rilla, dear, those were the man's very words, and you know how that poor little dog howled all night after the Battle of Courcelette. Yet he did not love Walter as much as he loved Jem. If he mourned for Walter like that, do you suppose he would sleep sound in his kennel the night after Jem had been killed? No, Rilla, dear, the little Jem is not dead, and that you may tie to. If he were, Dog Monday would have known, just as he knew before, and he would not still be waiting for the trains. It was absurd and irrational and impossible. But Rilla believed it for all that, and Mrs. Blythe believed it, and the doctor, though he smiled faintly in pretended derision, felt an odd confidence replace his first despair. And foolish and absurd or not, they all plucked up heart and courage to carry on, just because a faithful little dog at the Glen station was still watching with unbroken faith for his master to come home. Common sense might scorn, incredulity might mutter, mere superstition. But in their hearts, the folks of Ingleside stood by their belief that Dog Monday knew. Thank you for joining me for this reading of Rilla of Ingleside. Be sure to check for the Rilla Ingleside Readathon group on Facebook. And if you have not yet read Rilla of Ingleside yourself, run out and get a copy and read it. I'll wait.